Well, people are joining us, so I'll go ahead and start. For those who don't already know, Aidan is the writer of the popular Substack newsletter Gay Buffet, which is how we first met. I reached out to you when I started the Queer Love Project, and now you're also the host of the podcast Getting Close, which I know you're getting
Yes.
ready for your second season. Is that
Season
right?
2.
Yeah. So thanks for joining me. I wanted to ask you to join me. We've never done one of these chats officially.
I'm
I
so
mean,
happy
we've
to be
met and
here.
talked in real life. You were at our first New York reading actually last
Mhm.
year, last May. And so, because we're celebrating at Queer Love Project our second year anniversary, I wanted to talk to some special people who've been huge supporters. And it's been amazing over the last 2 years. You published an essay with us, which we'll talk about, and you did our QLP questionnaire. As I said, you're at a reading, so thanks.
Yeah, are we kidding? Of course. Happy second birthday. I'm so happy to be
Well,
a part of the celebration.
I've been very attentive to how you've managed your own life and experiences on Substack. So I noticed when you did your anniversary, I was like, "Oh, that's a smart idea." So I'm going to make a big deal out of it
Of course.
because
Life
you know,
is life is hard and we
yeah,
should celebrate.
exactly. So tell me a little bit about. I mean, I know when you started Gay Buffet, it was a different beast. It was a different
Mhm.
idea, and it's developed over time. And you've transitioned it from you still do like roundups of things and whatever, but it's much more about
Yeah.
intimate relationships, about how to navigate relationships. So tell me a little bit about how that developed and why you changed it.
Yeah, it's really gone through what would I say? I'd say we're in maybe its third chapter right now. So I started it back in 2023 as very much a side project, and I wanted to model it after the kind of newsletters that I liked, which were sort of little snippets of different things. There's a newsletter that I love called Charter, and it's just 3 charts, I think maybe 2 or
Hmm.
3 times a week, and it's the news in visual format. So I said I wanted to do something similar to that. So it was 6 sections after the 6 colors of the pride flag, the revised pride flag, not the progress or original. And it went through that for a while, and it sort of became like a travel newsletter when I was traveling
Hmm.
the country with the national tour of Girl from the North Country. And so I would use it to highlight queer history in each place I went and some queer nonprofits and raise money for them in each city that I went to. But then once I got back, I started to feel like I wanted to write longer form essays and
Hmm.
articles. And so I'd say around like 2024, fall of 2024, around the election, I let go of that six section part, and then it became much more like thematically one thing per week.
Right.
Then everything changed because my unemployment ran out. And I was like, well, I guess I got to figure out how to make some money. And I started my paid tier strictly about relationships. I love writing about
Hmm.
relationships. I love relationships. And then I wrote one article about sex, and it really brought the people in. And I said,
Yep.
okay, here's, it was why travel makes us horny.
Right.
And that really brought in a bunch of people. I wrote one about like how gays use close friends on Instagram.
Which,
That
by
really
the way,
blew them
I
out.
didn't know that people were doing that. So you taught me something when you wrote about
Mhm.
that. I
Mhm.
obviously am not using it the same way many other people are.
I know. I actually really wanna do a re-up of that one because I feel like even in the past year, people who do use it that way, it's changed again.
Yeah.
And so I'd be curious to see how the evolution of the platform has continued. But this yeah, so I started writing about sex, and that really took off, and then I started writing about open relationships, that really took off. So those 2, anytime I wrote about those things, it would really I'd see an influx of paid subscribers, so I followed the money, but also, like, I followed what I loved. Like, I think
Yeah.
it's so cool that I get to write about sex and relationships and, talk to people about it. A lot of what I do is surveys on Instagram about these topics that then feed like the data feeds, and then I can sort of explore that. And my favorite part is always an open response at the end and just hearing
Hmm.
people's opinions about all this stuff because sex and gay culture are so deeply intertwined, but we don't really look at it with a lens that is, I'd say I straddle the line between academic and like titillating. where it's like we're
Right.
talking about sex and people want to talk about sex, but we're talking about it from a way that actually helps people have better sex or have more connected sex or better relationships. And so now in chapter 3, that has really become my focus, and I've gone back a little bit to these sort of 6 section articles because I really want it to feel more like community based. So I do like guest posts. We just had one from Elliot Glazer about his
Mhm.
new book, and then there's like
Which
a
I'm in the middle
community
of
section.
listening to, by the way. It's
Oh,
very good.
it's so fun. I know. I really, really, he's a sweet dear friend now.
I'm sort of steeped in all of these memoirs at the moment. I also finished Ryan O'Connell's, and he's gonna be a guest
Mhm.
on the podcast, next month. So it's been a
Oh
lot
my
of
gosh.
gay memoirs lately.
What we're here for. We need the gay content.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, the
yeah.
other thing is, people bring up that term parasocial relationships,
Mhm.
and there is something with the Substack and the Instagram of it all. And you were really generous in letting people into the journey of you getting married, which was a year ago, last August.
Mhm.
So congratulations on almost
Thank
one
you.
year of legal marriage. And I always say
Mhm.
legal marriage because most of us have been in relationships much longer, and yet
Right.
people only validate it once you get legally married now, and that frustrates me.
Mhm.
But I mean, how did you negotiate that as well? Of like, okay, I'm going to tell people about my lead up to my wedding. That
Yeah.
was
Well, that
huge.
was a really carefully constructed, not constructed, but like I talked with my now husband a lot about that and sort of throughout everything because what I do is talk about a lot of personal things and a lot of intimate things, whether it's mine or otherwise. And we've really tried to figure out like the lens through which we want to be perceived on the internet, which actually we had a really sort of interesting conversation. I'd say like 8 or so months ago where we decided to move away from talking about us just
Right.
because it it felt like I felt and he felt like I wanted to move more towards being an educator,
Yeah.
and I wanted to move towards being able to like everything I talk about is that relationships are so unique to the people in them.
Hmm.
And so I was like, well, I don't want to base everything that I talk about on my particular relationship
Right.
because it's mine and it's not everyone else's. So I started, that's like when I started doing the surveys and talking to couples and really trying to make sure that anything I talked about was steeped in my own curiosity, but not necessarily in my own lived experience.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I am the through line and I am the deliverer of the information. But we thought that it would be like much more helpful to people if it was less about us.
Yeah.
And that's why I've been getting my sex educator certification through the
Oh,
Sexual
cool.
Health Alliance. Because again, as my platform has grown, which I'm really grateful for, I feel much more of a responsibility to start speaking again, not just from my own experience.
Yeah. No, I think that's great, and it's something I've gone through. I mean, I write personal essay and memoir, and working on a memoir that I've worked on for a
Hmm.
long time. And so my husband knows everything that I write about. I involve him in it. I read it to him. I get his sort of not permission, but like his blessing, I guess, in a way, or
Yeah.
not, because it's his life as well.
Hmm.
But at the same time, what's been amazing with the Queer Love Project is learning so much from people who have very, very different experiences from me.
Right.
I've learned so much about the aromantic, asexual community, about gender identity and gender expression. And I don't, as you and I are both cis white gay men, and we don't want it to just be about our experiences, right?
Right.
But you have a lot of cis women, a lot of women in general who follow you, straight women. What is that
Hmm.
like? I mean, why do you think they're following you?
What I have found, I think I think it's shifted a little bit in, I would say, the last 6 months since my content has become more gay. But a
Hmm.
lot of the women who follow me, a lot of it was like, I'm really interested in getting to know my son, my brother, my uncle, my friends better.
Right.
And so I thought it was a really beautiful exploration in allyship because these women like really were curious about all of these things and yet had no idea. And, sometimes it's weird to talk about sex and it's hard to broach sexual conversations. And, you know, the gays are so like open and closed about sex, which is really
Yeah,
fun. But I do really, I smile every time I get a new paid subscriber that's a woman, especially now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think the heated rivalry effect has been helpful? I mean, I have one of my best friends, she's heard
Hmm.
me talk about gay sex forever, but she's now middle-aged and obsessed with heated rivalry to a point that she's
Sure.
worried about her obsession, and she even told me, I mean, she's married to a man, they aren't having as much, sex in their day-to-day life, but she told me, she's like, "Oh
Hmm.
my god, I wish I had a prostate." I was like, "Girl, like, you have it so much easier in so many ways, but I agree
Yeah.
with you." You know?
Ah. Huh.
It's funny. It
I think there's maybe a part of that. But again, it's I straddled this strange line where it's like, I'm not really writing erotica because I know there's so much erotica on
right.
Substack, and I'm not writing academic, but I do just, like, thread this sort of line between the 2. So I think it does get, like, a little bit of both. And again,
Right.
there are topics I write that are super explicitly gay, and then other ones that I write about that are just about, like, sex and relationships and open relationships, and those I have found sort of attract a more diverse crowd.
Yeah. So the essay you wrote for us that we published, which was about being in a throuple and how you used a metaphor of a martini glass of the inverted
Mhm,
triangle and the stem being the place where you come together. And that was when you were 21. Obviously,
mhm.
you're almost 30 now.
I'm 30. I'm almost 31.
You You're almost 31. Okay, there you go. So tell me a little bit about how your perception has changed from not just when you wrote that piece, but when you lived that piece and to what you've learned and think about now. Like, would you have done it differently? Or, obviously you are
Yeah,
the person because of that experience.
right. It's really funny too, like, since I write about non-monogamy so much, and that is sort of, there's a couple I dated and a throuple I dated in that same time right after I moved to New York. And I had no idea that those relationships would be so instrumental in just everything that I do
Mhm.
now. And for that, I'm really grateful. Yeah, so the throuple, they were their own throuple, and then I was sort of like the fourth, which is the martini glass. Like, can I do this on camera? So like triangle,
There.
and then I was connected mostly to one of them, but to all three of
Yeah.
them. And then this couple that I also dated, um, showed me so much of what different types of relationships could look like. And I learned really quickly in a really immediate and intimate way how people can live. They can choose to live in separate bedrooms. They can choose to have, like different social dynamics. They can go off and do their thing. And I have, I grew up the youngest of four, and we're all
Mhm.
separated by 5 years. So I was a kid as all of my older siblings and my parents were all in relationships. So I spent my entire adolescence and like family trips just yearning to be in a relationship because I always felt so alone. I wasn't like lonely. They didn't do anything. I just was like, everyone's partnered but me. And so I always like yearned, ironic, at that point, I yearned for monogamy. And with these relationships, right when I moved to New York, I was so quickly learned that those can look really different, those
Mhm.
relationships. Would I do anything differently? I don't think I could have done anything differently. Um,
Well, those first New York experiences are so pivotal in so many ways.
so pivotal. And I'm really grateful for them. I would say the only flaw ish of them was that there was just a big age gap. I was 21 and they were in their early to mid 30s. And whether or not I didn't know what I was talking about or they didn't believe that I knew what I was talking about, there was that sort of imbalance. But I
Mhm.
also couldn't have learned from them if we had been the same age, I don't think.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting now as I am approaching the age that they were, that is sort of the interesting age, sort of like life passage moment where I'm like, wow, that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I had a really different vision for my life back then, but I'm so happy that it is the life that I'm living now and not the life
Mhm.
that I was living then, if that makes sense.
it does, and I think it'd be interesting if you ever decide to explore actually the placement of where you are. Like, I'm the oldest of 4 and you're the youngest of 4, and I
Mhm.
do think being the big brother or being the little brother can change your dynamic in, romantic and sexual relationships as
Totally.
well. But funny enough about that is I often always dated, uh, people who were older than me, and I never thought of it as a daddy thing. Now we talk about that so often, but when I was
Mhm.
growing up, we never used that term, to be honest.
Right.
And my first actual boyfriend in high school was a year older than me. My second serious boyfriend was actually 10 years older, but also a teacher in my school, so that was more complicated, and that's a whole different topic
Mhm.
for another day.
Uh-huh.
And I've written quite a bit about that, but have never published anything on it. And then I had a college boyfriend who was a year older, so never anybody younger. And then my next boyfriend was 13 years older, and then my next was 11, and that's my husband. So I've
Right.
always been with guys who are at least a decade older.
Mhm.
And it's funny what you talk about when you get to that age you were when they were dating you, and you're like, "Oh, I would never date that 20-something-year-old. I
I was
would
like,
never."
I could never do it.
And I definitely wouldn't have dated a 17-year-old when I was 27. When I got to 27, I was like, "What the hell is he thinking?" Um, and so I think what you're saying is true. That dynamic, though, of the age difference is so common in gay male
Mhm.
relationships, and we talk
Totally.
about it quite a
Just made
lot.
a video about it an hour ago.
Oh, there you go. And
Yep.
yet people try to pathologize it, yet I don't see it as a negative most of the time. I think it can be if done correctly, but
Well, again, I think, in the video, one of the things that I talk about primarily, so for those watching, I also do a series of educational videos on Instagram called Relationship School that I think I wanna change to just Gay School because it's funnier. Um, and because I'm like, it's gay. Everything I do is gay. That's like my guiding light. It's whatever. But, we do as gay people, and it's sort of why I wanted to start this series anyway, like, we don't get an education. And everything that we have to learn is passed down from one generation to another. And
right.
a friend of mine said it's folklore. Like we
Yeah.
are given folkloric information that is passed down, not like written down. It's not codified anywhere. It's just sort of given sort of culturally to those who come after you. And that's like a really beautiful part of the gay experience, I think. And a big reason too why we do gravitate towards these older partners. I'll at least speak for myself and maybe you.
Mhm.
There is just a helpfulness of like you at least have been through what I've been through and you understand it. And like I feel that sort of in every aspect of the life. I'm like, my doctor is gay and I love having gay doctors. I'm like, it's just people who get it. I surround myself with as many gay people as I can because we do have like a very different lived experience, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I have a theory around it that I call gay age as well, though, because I came out when I was 15, and most of those
Mhm.
guys that I was dating probably came out in their 20s. So we actually, I thought,
Sure.
actually have a similar gay emotional age.
Mhm.
And so even though I was the younger one, often I was the one that had more experience than they did, to
Right.
be honest. So it wasn't always about like you've been through this. It was more like we were at the same level. And
Mhm.
guys my own age were catching up in some ways,
Sure.
if that makes sense.
Just looking for
And
your
that's
emotional equal.
that's my theory at least. I'm sure people could torpedo it. Uh, yeah, no, I respect the fact that you are really doubling down though on the gay part of it because, you know, when I started Queer Love Project, I there's still a lot of people who have issues with that word queer. We obviously have seen
Right.
essays about it and articles published on it. And it wasn't something that we used when I was growing up, but I've really
Mhm.
embraced not as an umbrella term to be honest, but I view queer as feeling within my own culture, meaning like as an American or whatever, as feeling like an outsider, and that it's
Right.
part of my that the queer culture is something that I relate to, and so I am a queer gay man. So I
Right.
don't eschew the gay part. I still embrace that, but I also have realized that I always felt like a other, and I still
Right.
do, even within the gay community. I often am an outsider among a lot of gay guys,
Mhm.
and so that's okay. Um, so we've also both I never really did the dating thing on the apps. You have navigated
Mhm.
that, and we both have investigated what's going on at Hinge. And I was talking to my students that I teach, who are all in their 20s, and they're like, we only use Hinge, like they don't use any of the other
Right.
apps. But the thing that I learned that I was one surprised when I is that the pre dating that happens, like the sort of like
Mhm.
voice memos and all this other stuff and investigations, which we never had when I was growing up. And then also this feeling of being too much through in real life experiences and online. And I thought,
Right.
wow, I'm glad I never had to deal with that because I definitely was too much all the time. Probably am still too much. What do you, I mean, are you helping people navigate that part as well? Like the pre-sex, just the dating part?
I I write about it a lot. Whether or not I'm helping them or not is one thing. And I feel like I talk about it. I feel like I talk about it a lot more on podcasts. Like this is my happy place that unfortunately people don't quite want to think about this as deeply as I
Mhm,
feel like they should. But we're so I'm not going to say fucked because that's hopeless, but we are in a very difficult situation when it comes to human connection at this
yeah.
point in time. And what I find really sad and that I see a lot of the happen on the internet is that we're blaming each other, right?
Mhm,
We are so mad that all of these platforms have completely cannibalized how we talk to each other. Like I'm only able to talk to you through Substack's rules about how we can communicate on this live stream. I am only
mhm,
able to, Substack delivers articles by email and by the app. So I don't really have control over how my information is getting out. I can email directly, but Instagram. Instagram decides who sees my stuff.
yeah,
Instagram decides whose stuff I see. Every platform has its rules. Grinder filters by location, but not actually, because as soon as you scroll to like the cutoff, it posts all the hottest guys. So you want to pay for premium.
mm,
Like again, everything that we do online is dictated by the phones. Even
yeah,
the phones themselves, like the badges that we have are red because red is the most aggravating color. So we want to click on them to get rid of them. Like everything, color theory, psychological theory,
yeah, yeah,
addiction
yeah,
theory, it's all there. So what happens is we get really pissed at each other when it's like not actually each other that we should be getting mad at.
yeah,
And when it comes to dating, we are exposed to more rejection than we're ever meant to have. But what I've been really sitting with a lot this summer in particular, as I've been thinking about it, is that we don't have the time and space to let relationships develop anymore.
right.
I've been doing some interviews with some open couples about their relationships. And the through line that I found, especially with older couples, is that the relationships like built over a long time before they decided to become partners. And they didn't build over a series of dates. They just like spent time together or did mutual things together or were in school together or worked together. And we just like don't have that anymore. Even if you meet someone on a Hinge or a Tinder or a Grinder, you
Mhm,
are exposed to each other in really intense, really high stakes situations. A date is a very high stakes situation right now because if you don't nail the first date, you're not going to get a second date. And
right.
then there's all the communication that happens within the date that also is affected. Oh, he didn't text me back fast enough. I guess I don't like him. He must not like me. And it just is not a space in which we can actually grow and authentically learn about each other.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I learned, because I've been in an open relationship for 25 years now, is
Right.
at the beginning, I wouldn't disclose because that was an
Mhm.
uncomfortable thing and I didn't really understand that. And later, I learned two things through lots of trial and error and angry moments with people. One
Mhm.
was some people are attracted to the fact that I'm in a long term relationship and now married and they want to learn from that. They also want to try things out on me, right? Like they use me as
Yeah.
practice and I'm safe, which I appreciate.
Mhm.
Um, and then the other thing was that if they are interested in dating, they felt like I was keeping that secret and then disappointing them, right? And that's when I
Right.
realized disclosure was important, and that if they were
Mhm.
going to reject me, because of my relationship status, and that was fine because I didn't want them to have the wrong idea.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely, and I've written about this one night when I got a text from my partner after I'd hooked up with the guy, and when the guy was like, "Who is that?" I was like, "Oh, it's my boyfriend." And he was like, "What?" And then he freaked out and was like, "You're the reason
Yeah.
why gay guys are never gonna have what we about." And it became, and I was like, "Wow, okay, there's a lot going on here." And I just stepped into it. But then I thought, well, yeah, I mean, he didn't know, but also we met at the Cock and went back to his place. Like there was no really
Right.
chance to talk about it. So are those the kind of things in your interviews that your people are talking about, like how they got to those rules or how they got to,
Mhm.
I mean, I really believe there should be some ground rules, but
Yeah.
I've broken every single one of those ground rules at the same time.
Well, again,
But at
it's
least we talked
it's
about
right. And again, like it's an interesting part of gay culture where gay men are the most likely to be in open relationships out of any other demographic. It's most common. It's sort of I would say expected in very strong quotes.
it. Right,
But there is a conversation about it that has to happen that does not happen in primarily straight relationships. And there are a lot of rules, and a lot of what people ask me are like, "What are the rules? How do I have the
right.
conversation? What should they be?" And they are all dependent on people. So what I like to do is give my last article was like 63 rules, and it was just rules that other open couples use that you can read and be like, "I like that rule. I don't like that rule." But they're really helpful just to sort of start brainstorming these ideas because with open relationships, you don't they have their own set of rules that nobody like sits
Yeah.
down and talks about them. Again, everyone's just like winging it and being like, well, I hope this works. But then you get into a situation where you're like, well, I'm with this guy. He doesn't know because he hasn't asked. But do I disclose? Do I not? Like, and then you have all the people on the other side of that who are like, well, I was with this guy and then he didn't tell me he was open. And so I hate
Mm,
open couples. There's a
yeah,
lot of
exactly.
people like to pin their unhappiness on whatever, and openness is a sort of easy scapegoat. And a lot of people do use it badly. So I'm not going to say it's like pure, but
I'm gonna tell you our 3 ground rules, but I also we have a lot of people who joined us. If you have any questions for either of us, drop them in the chat, and hopefully we'll be able to get to them.
I love
Uh,
chat
but
questions.
our original, 3 rules were pretty simple. They were, tell each other everything, no overnights,
Mhm.
and, wait, there's what's the 3rd one? What? Tell each other everything. I had it in my head, and now I'm already forgetting what it was. And then on top of that, and I'll remember the 3rd one, we had some silly extra ones, which were like no bald guys because my partner is bald and he felt like it was competitive, and no architects because he's an architect. And none of
That's
those
funny.
really, that was more about the jealousy thing.
Right.
Tell each other everything, no overnights, and oh, only once.
Oh,
And,
mhm.
that we realized was not sustainable, one, because it just creates a lot higher body count and so potential
Right.
risk. Um, and then, eventually we didn't wanna tell each other everything. We got over that. We still talk about it all, but, we don't have to give all the brutal details.
Right.
So
Well, and I've learned too that oftentimes with open couples, that it's really important for you to have really clear rules at the beginning, and then usually over time they just sort of coalesce into communicate.
yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
I mean, the other thing that I feel like you're also an advocate for is destigmatizing the whole slut thing, which
Mhm.
I agree with that, and it's something that I've come to terms with and what my memoir is all about, because basically I met somebody who allowed me to be the slut that I am, and that is a really great feeling to have that safety net of somebody you can trust and who's not gonna reject you or not gonna judge you even when you make a lot of stupid mistakes.
Right.
And I even recently published an essay with Narratively about that, about when I thought, "Oh, maybe I should be a sex worker." And he was like, "Sure, if you wanna try it." And then I very quickly
Yeah.
was like, "I don't think I want that relationship to sex. I enjoy it too much. I don't want it to be a job."
Right.
Um, but I had a sort of fantasy around being a sex surrogate. I don't know if you've ever
Mhm.
watched that movie with Julianne Moore. I think it's Julianne Moore.
Mm-mm.
There's a movie about, no, it's not Julianne Moore, sorry, it's Helen Hunt.
Okay.
Helen Hunt being a sex surrogate, and I thought, "That's really great role." Like, I like that idea.
Right.
Um, anyway, so, tell me a little bit about that,
Yeah.
this slut moniker.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because so much of the discourse around open relationships online ends up as like slut shaming very quickly.
Yeah.
And it's both slut shaming and bottom shaming, which I find so funny because it's like so misogynistic. And no matter what, like if I say, like there was a clip, my husband and I were interviewed by John Dean, who's a documentarian from England about our relationship. And John, again, dear friend, but he posted a clip that was just me talking, saying something along the lines of like, I want to experience everything that life has to offer. Why would I not want that for my partner too? It, the the comments were insane. I asked him to sort of take me off of being a collaborator, and he ended up taking it down because it was just so vitriolic. But every single one was like, this is just like a hungry little bottom who just wants to get fucked, and this is just like a slut, and this is
Right.
a blah blah blah, and he just wants to go ride every day. And it's funny because I'm like, I'm a sex columnist. I'm a sex educator. Yeah, I love sex. I love talking about sex. I love having sex. I love helping people have sex. Like, you're not going to shame me for that. I love
Yeah.
topping. I love bottoming. I love all types of sex. So you're not going to shame me about that either. But it just really stuck out to me about, wow, like it also always, every critique is a reflection of the problem that the person who's commenting is having. Right.
Right.
I think I had to learn that lesson very quickly because a lot of my stuff is so personal. So if people are going to comment on it, I have to be like, all right, that's not about me. If somebody is mad that I'm having a lot of sex, it might be because they're not having a lot of sex. If somebody hates an open relationship and they're single and feeling frustrated, it might be because they're like, why does this person get to have a relationship and have sex if I'm not
Yeah.
able to have a relationship? Why are these people so greedy? Why are they so selfish? So I just try to sort of remind myself of that when I'm feeling that way. I also like really try to check my privilege. Like, I am a tall, cis white man in New York City. Being open and having access to sex is easier for me than it is for a lot of people. And that's again why I wanted to move away from my own experience and start talking to other people and start learning from other people and sort of disseminating that information, because I believe that sex is a really beautiful part of the human experience. And yet
Yeah.
we live in a very anti-sex culture, and not a lot of people are having the sex that they want to have because we don't talk about it. So I'm happy to talk about it. And if I get some slut shaming in the comments, like that to me is worth the good comments that say, hey, you really helped me figure something out with my husband. Or, I was just on Fire Island and somebody came up to me and was like, wait, I literally just finished watching your videos about poppers, and now I know so much more about poppers and how to use them healthfully if I want to. And I was like, bam, I love that.
Yeah.
And
It's
those
I
make me so much happier than the negative comments make me upset.
Well, that's the other side of that, right? Is normally you don't receive the positive ones as often, or even if you do, you don't listen to them as much as the negative, and that's just a truth about most humans. So,
No, I'm
um,
like, can you see? I print them out and I put some on my wall
oh,
just next to the
nice.
calendar.
That is good. You like the affirmations.
Oh yeah.
Actually, that's one of the things that my therapist gave me as homework recently was to collect all of the positive things that I've gotten for the Queer Love Project, because I often receive them, but I don't collect them, and I don't.
Mm.
I need to do something better with that instead of undermine myself in other ways. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that has been really fulfilling for me is the, and I'm assuming you have followers from all over the world, is some of the
Mhm.
people I've connected with on the platform that I never would have expected. I published a couple pieces by a guy who's in Lagos in Nigeria. I was just working this morning with a writer who's in Nairobi, and I'm like, these are fascinating stories and experiences and so different than the
Right.
ones that I have experienced in my own life. Um, have there been any surprises along the way of things that through any of the people who've found you either through the Instagram polls or, things that are unexpected?
I think it's mainly like the scope. I had a survey, a call for like interview participants essentially like a month ago. And anytime I have these surveys, I'm like, where are you from? And I just, every time I get, again, submissions from literally all over the world. And I'm just like, how do these people like find me? How do these people know who I am? Like it's so cool. And again, so much of
Yeah.
what I do is anti social media because I do think it's really bad and
Yeah.
sort of like the root cause of most of the things that we are dealing with as a society. But then little things like that happen and I'm like, "Ah, this is again,
Yeah.
a year and a half ago to maybe even a year ago, I had no idea that this thing called Substack could be the reason that I like don't have to work part-time jobs and could say goodbye to acting. And I just think that is so incredible and something I'm so grateful for. And, like doing these interviews, talking to these people, I just like pinch myself that I'm like, how lucky am I that I get to talk to people about sex and interview them? And just like, it's so cool. I don't
I
know.
agree. As
I
much
love
as I also shit on social media, I do think the technology has allowed for some. I was, interviewing Hugh Ryan about his '90s gay memoir, and we didn't have that ability to connect in the same way.
right.
And I actually didn't even participate in AIM and all of the AOL of it all in
Mhm.
that time period because I was in a relationship and I didn't need to go find people. But
Right.
yeah, the fact that we're able to connect with people globally, like I have a queer writer from the Middle East, and yeah, just all these people. It's just really, really great. So one of the questions I always ask everybody, and you've actually answered it in the questionnaire, and it's the big question, which is how do you define love? And we've talked about sex, which I think is also important to bring up, is that many people confuse sex with love,
Mhm.
and that's also why they get angry when we are very pro sex.
Yeah.
But you're a married man now and you've been through a lot. When you think about love, I mean, normally the way I give people an entry point into it in the questionnaire is it that spark when you first meet somebody, or is this long
Right.
durational thing of support? So how do you think of
That is a great direction because, like, that way I'm like, "Oh, it's easily the second one." I think I'm a what did my husband say? An insatiable romantic, but also really pragmatic and logical, where I'm like, "No, the initial spark is just chemicals in your brain and dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin being released for
It's
you."
why I don't like Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet, I'm like,
So dumb. It's so dumb. They knew each other for 3 days, and they were
yeah,
14.
yeah,
Romeo and Juliet, and unfortunately, West Side
that is
Story.
lust.
I know, and I love West Side. It's gorgeous, but I just, like, every time I watch it, I'm like, I cannot get behind this level of obsession.
Yeah,
But again, we're taught that that's what it looks like. We're taught, like, Titanic is another one.
yeah.
Bridges of Madison County is another one. Where we are enamored by these big feelings and they feel really good. And we're not taught that what relationships take is sacrifice and compromise and learning how to talk to each other and I think like and doubt, and sort of just like finding someone to be like, "Hey, you're my best friend and I think if the life that we want is the life that we build together, then like that to me is love, you know?"
Yeah, although I'm a bit critical of the lavender marriage surge, and I've written a little bit about that, and I've been investigating it. Do you know about that couple, the gay guy and the
Mm.
woman who got married because they're best
Oh.
friends? They're very big on social media, and that's why I think I found out it had gotten so huge because they it's apparently the search term for lavender marriage like shot up 2,000% over 1 year because of all of this.
Mhm.
And I like that we've recovered that in the sense that two friends could just get married if they don't want to
Right.
have a sexual relationship, and they do support each other. I do agree that that is love. But I hope that it can be more than that as well. I don't know.
But again, I
It's
think we're in this era and time and space where everything about relationships is being called into question. You
yeah,
know, Gen Z is dating less, Gen Z is having less sex. We like some people like can't afford to not live together or they can't afford to
yeah.
get married. Like it's just I feel like in every aspect we are tearing everything apart and being like, what does this serve? Like marriage is a pretty ancient institution. that
Yeah.
has a lot of baggage. And again, like a lot of the critique I get about open relationships is an open relationship not looking like what the commenter thinks a relationship should be. It's like, well, then you're just roommates. Then you're just best friends. Then you're just like
Yeah.
whatever. And it's like, well, don't you want to marry your best friend? Don't you want to be in a
Right.
relationship with your best friend? If a monogamous couple is married for decades and then stops having sex, are they still married? And
Right.
if they stop having sex, but they have sex with other people, like it just, we are so obsessed with making sure that other people's relationships fit our own definition, and it is tearing us all apart. You know,
And
it's
there's a certain privilege you get from getting legally married that is really frustrating that you can't get
right.
that without taxes and healthcare and all kinds of other things.
Mhm.
Um, so obviously people should be following you if they want to get some of the advice and some of the instruction you're going to give. But if you were to give people who are struggling with dating or relationships or finding love, what is your your takeaway for some sort of advice for them?
Yeah. I would say with dating, play your hand. Um, Again, with the Hinge report and just I think within life in general right now, people are really afraid of being too much, really afraid of being earnest. I unfortunately, actually fortunately, I think am so earnest and
Right?
cannot I cannot lie. I cannot hold my cards to my chest. I'm just like, this is me.
Yeah.
And I think it's like really helped me. I don't like life's too short for subtlety and playing games. So if you care about someone and if you had a good time with someone, like tell them and let them
Yeah.
know. And the second half to that is don't let the way that you exist digitally with someone change how they make you feel in person. If you
Right.
like someone and had a great time with them in person, but you don't like how they text, make better plans to see them again and stop texting, which is really hard. Like, that's so much harder said than done. But I have so many friends who are like, oh, I had this amazing time, but he didn't text me back fast enough. So I'm done. And I'm like, no, no,
Yeah.
make plans, see him again and like
Yeah.
throw your phone away.
Yeah, no, I love that because I am similar in that sense that I just am way extra and just myself, and in real life, that comes off really well. It doesn't always work digitally. And also, I've had, relationships with millennials and younger who have been like, "You text like an old person," and then they tell me how to text back. So I think that's the other part is you
Right.
can be open, you can say like, "Okay, well, then what did I do wrong?" You
Right.
know? And, like, "Tell me how you prefer me to do this, and I'll try to change if that
Right.
helps."
And I think like, understand that other people like might not communicate the same way, but I think it's better to try and
Yeah.
express yourself than contort yourself to fit something that won't work.
Well, I think that's a great way to end our chat, and this has been always inspiring talking, and,
Likewise.
looking forward to the 2nd season of the podcast. Anything you wanna tell people, or is it all secret?
It is not even all secret. It's just very vague at this point. I said that
Okay.
starting out season one, I said I want to work as hard as I can to get it to a place where I can have some help. And so we have a new home, we have a new studio, we have a new producer, and we might have a new distributor. All of those things are slowing the process of coming back, but I would rather come back correctly than quickly.
Nice.
It's going to have some very big and exciting guests.
Good.
So getting close, you can listen to the season one wherever you get your podcasts. Gay Buffet is where I write, and Aidan Wharton is me on Instagram.
Yes, and I should add that if you're listening to this or finding this somewhere and you're not already a subscriber to the Queer Love Project, you can find us at
Mhm.
queerloveproject.substack.com. And, congrats, Aiden, and
Thank
we'll
you.
talk to you
Happy
more
second
soon.
birthday.
All right, thanks.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.